Hi, my name is Packy, creator of Pack Rat's Shack. I upcycle furniture, build out of pallet wood, finish interior spaces, and have a vendor booth for my creations. Welcome to my world.
Anyway, welcome back to Pack Rat's Shack. I'm really excited about this video because I'll finally be showing you something that I've completed. Okay, I'm not actually complete with it, but you get the whole overall idea of what it would look like when it's completed. It's actually like the first space that I could use my creative imagination and like build something design-wise, but also alleviate some other aspects of what could be a challenging job. So I'll take the time to remind you that when I first came down here at the end of April, I really didn't know what I was getting into. I had a plan to evaluate the situation, figure out, did I have any electric? Did I have any running water? What is available for use? How do I get started? And through this entire video, you see me going from hand tools and battery operated tools to eventually being able to use my saws and different things that run off of electricity. I got started on it pretty quickly after I arrived because my goal being here for a week to make plans and get supplies ordered and deliveries set just didn't work out to plan because I had mechanical issues with my vehicle and therefore I couldn't make it back to Indiana for my last load. So as Mom was able to bring down more and more of my tools and supplies, I was able to become more and more efficient. This project in particular has taken a couple of months to get to that point because I did work it in around when supplies were being delivered and I could get to the upstairs. Basically, whenever there was a space of time where I couldn't be working upstairs, I would come back down and work on my space. And you can see here, this is early on and I'm starting out by using hand tools because I have no electric at this point. So I'm actually cutting these 1x to go behind some 2x4 pieces so I can insert blocking between the trusses on where my drywall sheeting is going to end on the ceiling. My overall end plan determines how I'm going to be installing my drywall. I want my joints to line up a certain way so that in the end I can finish it out the way I want to and everything lands in the positions I planned for. Now keep in mind that you can do the same finishing technique and get the same look after you've smoothed everything out. But my whole goals here are to save time and workload and my neck by planning where my joints are so I can save time on mudding and sanding as much as possible in this space, especially in the overhead position. So basically all I have to worry about smoothing out and mudding in after my drywall is installed above head is the actual screw heads that will be exposed. All of the joints are going to be taken care of by another means. The backing blocks that I installed to secure the drywall also serves a second purpose. It also helps in holding up the sound barrier insulation that I'm installing, but where there's no backer blockings, I'm just using drywall tape that I've stapled into place to just help support it up until the drywall is installed and holding it into place. Yay for me, another task complete. Well, half done, that is. While you're watching this video, you're going to see that only half of the room is getting done at a time, and you might be wondering, why is she only doing half of the room at one time? Like, why don't you just do the whole room? Well, I have a very good, kind of unusual reason for that. You see, I have a huge piece of furniture that I just can't lift by myself anymore. And so when I had the movers bring it down, I actually had them set the top on top of the base in the room that the piece belongs in. Therefore, it's stored, covered up on one side of the room. I'll be finishing the first side of the room, and later, after I move the piece into its final resting position, then I can finish out the rest of the room. See, makes perfect sense, doesn't it? But anyway, let's get back to the plan. My ceiling drywall plan stems all from the center light fixture. So after I cut the hole for the light box in the center of this drywall piece and install it with my drywall lift system, I can then make sure it's centered by measuring it off of a wall, and then work all the rest of my drywall off of that, which will then give me a perfectly centered grid line for all of the joint systems. And I don't know about you with progressive lenses, but I've discovered that I can't tell a straight line from anything anymore. So I'm constantly using chalk lines or levels to mark all of the stud or truss locations so that I can anchor my screws into something solid rather than an airspace behind them. Apparently I don't want to give too much away on the ceiling yet, so let's move on to the walls. Actually, is what it is when I first got here, I didn't have internet, I didn't have electricity to keep recharging my batteries. I just simply had to limit the amount that I put on storage. So here you can see that I'm using a stud that I secure to the wall in order to help me hold the drywall into place so I can then screw it onto the wall. And again, no judgment here. The way I'm installing the drywall all depends on my plan for finishing out in the end. As you can see, I use anything I can get my hands on to help me hold the drywall into place until I can secure it down. Here I'm having to adjust the cutout that I put for the outlet box because, as you can see, the drywall sheet didn't fit in perfectly as everything seems to be a bit unsquare here. This was actually before I just totally gave up using my little zippy tool for outlet boxes. They just make a mess out of them.
I've got power now. I can hook up my light for my kitchen zone. I worked through all of my DeWalt batteries because I got going on drywalling my bedroom. Where I have the drywall in, I've put a sound barrier insulation. I'm not sure how well it'll help. It's something that Mom suggested. And so I'm for sure doing it in my bedroom and bathroom area, which I haven't gotten it in there yet.
can't believe I'm already mudding something. I'm actually starting to get excited because I know how close I am to finally being able to add my creative touch to this space. And although you're viewing this video in the middle of July, this was actually back in the middle of May. So 2 months ago, I was already mudding something. And you're going to notice that there's splotchiness in my mudding technique. Well, that's because, as I mentioned earlier, the reason I lined up my joints the way they were was to save overall workload and time. Any space that's left unmud is because of the plan that I have in the finishing details of the space. However, after I did pick out my trim that I plan on using for a chair rail area, I realized that the lower areas close to the factory edge of the drywall was just a bit too wide. So I ended up having to go back and fill in a little bit of drywall in those spaces before priming the space out. Just finished my third coat of mud on these areas that I'm getting going on in my bedroom. And I just now thought to get my dehumidifier out of the shed and get it going. Being that the humidity down here is so wet, it's taken like 2 days for each coat to dry. So hopefully now this will speed things up now that that light bulb went off in my head. I went out for an errand run, more materials and supplies from Lowe's, and a stock up of food supplies and drinking water. And this was completely full when I got back. I just emptied it, and the drywall is nearly completely dry, except for in the deepest corners or joints where it was a little thicker. But that's a matter of a few hours as opposed to 2 days. So now that all of my drywall is installed and my mudding is done, I get to move on to the next phase, which is building my creative plan. Now things are really going to start to come together, and you're going to be able to see and understand my idea as I build it up layer by layer. And I'm sure this isn't true for most people, but when the paintbrushes come out, I'm getting excited because I can see that things are finalizing and my plan is going to be out of my head and something I can actually look at and enjoy. And because I know how close I am to revealing my color scheme to you. On this construction grade wood, priming really does make a difference, but one coat is pretty thin, so I will end up putting on a second coat. While I have all of my supplies out for the second coat, I'm just going to move on to priming the ceiling and the walls. I really do like using Valspar Heavy Bonding Primer, which I get at Lowe's, but it is a very, as it says, heavy primer, and it really does help smooth out any textural differences between the drywall surface and the mudding surface. Now that all of the primer is dry, I'm starting my first layer of trim work over the joints of the ceiling. I use construction adhesive glue and just your typical 1 3/4 inch finish nail. First step of ceiling trim in order to not have to mud the joints was 1.5 by 1.5 ripped down pieces that I went into the corners with and then caulked and primed them. And then I just got through installing these, which go across the joints and butt into the 1.5 inch squares. And this is a 2 1/4 by about 1/2 inch. And this is just one layer. There's going to be another layer on top of this in the center to make it more decorative. But I'm really pleased with how it's turning out so far. And of course, after the grid system I've installed is done, I do go and caulk all of the seams. I follow that with applying a nice decorative piece that I'm centering within the flat surface. This layer is really going to be adding more depth into the overall design. On these really long cuts, it was a bit difficult. I ended up taping them up in order to get them close to where they'd be butting into the next piece to cut it at a more precise length. And these joints aren't any fancy cut. I basically just used a 45 that went with the angle of the overall design of the piece that it butted up into, and then I'll use caulk to fill in the gaps, but I do try to make the gaps as minimal as possible. Would you have ever guessed that I am actually painting the ceiling black? I have actually never painted a ceiling any other color than whites or off-whites. So this was a bit of a stretch for me, but in all reality, it wasn't scary at all. I was confident that this would work in my overall scheme because of the height of the ceilings that I have down here. I'm just overly excited about the height of the ceilings here because the house I just sold had very short ceilings. And so here with the high ceilings, it just seems like you have so much more space and a few more design possibilities. I'd like to point out that when you are painting your ceilings and you know you're going to be painting a wall afterwards, there's no point in spending time edging it in. Just get that paint all the way into the corner and even down onto the wall, because that's the way you're filling in that whole corner. And as long as you feather out your brush strokes so there's no ledge left, you're golden. Don't be shy. Let me know what you think. Would you ever paint a ceiling black? I never really thought I would, but here I love it. I know it needs a second coat, but I'm just loving it, and I know I've made the right choice. I don't feel that you can have such an extravagant ceiling and then leave your imagination off of the wall treatment. So this is why I hung the drywall vertically on the walls, because in the chair rail space, every 4 foot where the joint is going to be a vertical section, which then creates these 4 foot rectangular boxes along the chair rail space. I later fill out the design with some smaller delicate trim, but first we need to really get this door jamb taken care of so I know exactly where I need to stop the chair rail at. Again, this is another project where I'm just using scrap pieces that were left behind. And I'm using these pieces to block in the door jamb areas so my actual door jamb will finish on the door where I want it to. Then I just rip down some 1x, the width that I need them in order to build the jam up. Can you believe that these 4 1x10 planks were left? I mean, full planks. I don't know what they would have been used for, but I'm glad they were left behind. They are a little damaged from what looks like the forklift or whatnot. But I'll just be systematic in how I use them and make sure they're on the backside that'll never be viewed again, or be able to completely rip the bad edge off for some projects. I even found this real cool piece that was in the scrap pile that I'm going to end up using for a more substantial header instead of just the boring little piece of trim that I bought. I really like how this piece worked out for my decorative header. And I can just screw it into place with deck screws because it's distressed and beat up, and I want to keep all of that character with it. So the screws aren't going to be an eyesore, and they actually will hold this heavy solid piece into place a lot better than tiny little finish nails will. Here I kind of had a plan on how I wanted to use these little delicate trim pieces to make a pattern within my 4-foot rectangular chair rail boxes. But it wasn't a specific plan. I really needed to tidy up my image with visual insight on how it looked, and then measuring it all out to keep it the same from one rectangle to the next. Again, I'm using construction grade glue and finish nails to install them into place. And with all of my trim, I've been constantly going back and wiping off any of that glue that is oozing out from behind, because you don't want your finished design concept to have globs of glue poking out. That's just a lazy oversight. What do you think about this color? It's fawn brindle and it's in Sherwin-Williams cashmere line, and I just really love the low luster sheen. I just love this color, and I pretty much knew I was going to have this color in my bedroom ever since I repainted the kitty room in the house that we just sold. I loved it so much there, and I just feel like I didn't get to live with it very long, so I knew I would be using it in my future. Molly, Ryan, I really hope you love it too, but if you don't, it's yours now. You can always change it to whatever you want. Rainbow colors for all I care. I have been so excited to uncover my wall unit and move her into place, and to view her in all of her glory and beauty all together once again. So this isn't just a piece of furniture. I mean, to you it might be, but to me it's not. This was actually like my first adult piece of furniture buy, where you're actually making a design plan and you're saving your hard-working money to order exactly what you want, and then you have to wait months for it to be shipped from overseas. I mean, this was an important piece in my life. And it's not just that, it's the fact that the last house that we had such low ceilings that I couldn't even put the top piece in the center on it unless you took the feet off, which then the center didn't line up with all of the pieces on either side of it. So this centerpiece has been in storage for several years, and I actually had even thought about cutting her down and making a hall closet out of her. I'm so glad I never fit in the time to do that, and most likely it's because I really didn't want to. So now we get to see how beautiful is she with this black and fawn brindle color scheme. Well, I really do hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it was kind of long, but there was a lot to fit in. I mean, I mean, the whole project from studs to a finished space. Well, half of a finished space. But at least you know what the rest will look like once I get it complete. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe out there.